A number of comprehensive histories of the devil have been written from various points of view, some running to several volumes. What is clear from all of them is that Lucifer is not entirely a biblical character. Like Jesus, he is based on primeval myth with a thin Jewish Roman Christian overlay. There are several deities that were worshipped throughout the Roman Empire that are good candidates for the original pre-Christian devil. Thanks, once again, to remarks by Aleister Crowley, many people, especially neo-pagans, assert that the devil is simply Pan. They say that the early Christians took this friendly forest god with his pipes and perpetual hard-on and turned him into the devil. They go further and state that there is no devil, that he is purely a Christian invention. This looks reasonable on the face of it, if you don't know anything about history. First of all, Pan was not the happy little god that one sees on greeting cards and in children's books. This is the castrated version that has been perpetuated by our culture. And the neo-pagans seem to have bought into it. He was, in fact, along with Silenus, a number of other entities, a nature god, a god of dark forests and wild beasts. The fact that a direct confrontation with Pan was supposed to drive people mad says something about his nature. Even with this violent aspect restored, however, Pan and his cult do not match up at all well with the myth and worship of the fallen one. Others do. To properly understand this, we need to examine the traditional character and powers of Lucifer, leaving aside both Milton and the rantings of the fundamentalists. Lucifer, or Iblis to the Muslims, is a supernatural entity of immense age and power who, for reasons rather obscure, fell into conflict with the Supreme Being. We are using the monotheistic myth here, of course. Because of this conflict, he and his supporters were tossed out of heaven and made a new camp for themselves elsewhere. This Supreme Being, Jehovah or Allah, you pick one, was a strict disciplinarian when it came to his creation. He especially wanted mankind kept fettered and in ignorance. This, of course, was for mankind's own good. It became the goal of Lucifer, Iblis, to disrupt this rigid order and set up his own looser organization. He began this project by offering man the things that God forbade him. This led to the fall of man and the teaching to mankind of various occult arts, which led to the rise of civilization. Whether you see this as a bad thing or not depends largely on whether you have ever had to live naked in the woods with no toilet paper. So, in return for allegiance and various other forms of payment, like any other ancient god, the devil will grant magical powers, knowledge, beauty, etc., etc. That is one half of the picture. On the other side, we have Satan the adversary. For the Jews, Satan meant accuser, and it was an office, not a being, who spreads disease, heresy, destroys civilizations, a lot like Jehovah, and does a multitude of other unpleasant things. This double light-bringing and destructive aspect, removed from the superstitious trappings of modern religion, is a common characteristic of all deities that come from a polytheistic source, including the Old Testament version of Jehovah. In our culture, the devil also presides over sexuality and artistic creativity. Both sex and beauty are considered potentially, if not intrinsically, evil, unless rigidly controlled by the church or state. This attitude represses natural urges and abilities in people, creating emotional devastation, which in turn often inspires a greater need for the church or state. This cycle of temptation, fulfillment, guilt has created a psychological maelstrom among some segments of the population of the United States. This is expressed in the rage and envy vented from the pulpit against rock stars, artists, writers, even scientists. The target is anyone who they suspect has freed themselves from the Christian emotional bind, or as Reich called it, emotional plague, or worse yet, has never been in it. These people are labeled as satanic, and some, like rock stars, have even been accused of literal devil worship. Another expression of this illness is the current urban myth of a worldwide satanic conspiracy. This nonsense has been exploded dozens of times in major newspapers and magazines over the years. But if you don't read, or even if you do, you don't have to pay attention to facts. Thousands of the half-educated middle class firmly believe that there is an organized underground that routinely performs human sacrifice many times a year with absolutely no trace of the bodies. It has been pointed out that the white middle class is more susceptible to this kind of fear because they are more vulnerable. The poor have nowhere to fall, and the rich are too powerful to be bothered. They have supposedly been up to this throughout this century without ever being caught. According to an FBI investigation on satanic crime, no such conspiracy exists, a fact which this movement ignores. This is explained by asserting that there is a network of satanic lawyers, doctors, travel agents, preschools, etc., all identifiable by secret symbols in the yellow pages. Thus, babies are born and raised without birth certificates, payoffs are made, and everyone is protected. What is significant about this delusion, which has recurred throughout human history and is called the blood libel, is that it mirrors exactly what fundamentalist Christians themselves do. They actually have fundamentalist lawyers, doctors, TV repairmen, travel agents, etc., who can be identified by secret symbols in the yellow pages. If you don't believe us, just let your fingers do the walking and look for that little fish. What all of this says is that basically, in a culture with an authoritarian mythology, the devil is the god of the repressed. Thus, painters and photographers who do all those dirty nudes and sexy, sweaty rock stars dressed in leather and covered with tribal tattoos are all genuinely sons of the devil. But once again, who really is this devil?